Well, I'm actually just about to do a Zoom call this week with UNICEF in the UK, who are looking at possibly coming in as a major contributor and sponsor to our VUSA comic selection, the comics that we do for the rural educational kids. With our educational program, which I'm very strong on it, because one has to understand that the future of conservation is not actually in your hands or in my hands. It's in the hands of little rural school children, Black kids, that will make the decision ultimately in the conservation as to whether it stays or whether it goes. It's not in our hands. Those people are directly linked to what happens to the likes of Kruger Park, et cetera, because they live in that environment, and they will be the ambassadors for the future. But we need to start educating them now, because if you look at the school educational system, we don't bring in anything about pangolins, hornbills, vultures. What role does a vulture play? It's such an important species. The kids don't know this. So what we've been doing is we've been drilling into the cultural aspect of a specific species, even though the cultural aspect might not be practiced any longer because we live in a very modern society. Story about VUSA, the elephant guardian, the value of tusks and the value of, I mean, it's going to take me a few weeks to do that, but it's a bumper edition. It's a really thick, it's going to be our biggest comic we've ever produced. It's a 44-pager. Usually we only do about 20, 24 pages. So it's a big one, but I want the kids to read in that, yes, elephants are dangerous, and yes, they do come and raid your crop. But here are some of the aspects of elephants and why we need to protect them and how we should protect them and how we should actually conduct our lives. The same with lions, the same with hippos. And I mean, the species will outlive me. I'll be dead by the time. I will never get to all the species. But slowly, if we can produce these comics, it's education of the future generations. It's their heritage as much as it is mine. I sent 80 comics overseas via DHL so that she can spread them around with some of the officials in there who are looking at these. And there's no reason why a person in a first world environment, a child, can't learn the same thing, because a hornbill's a hornbill. Doesn't matter where. The fact that you're sitting in London doesn't matter. You should know that you could become an ambassador even though you don't have hornbills in the center of London. You can still be a wildlife ambassador to say. But more importantly, the children wanted to know what we are doing with lions with collars on. And that gave the birth to VUSA, the Lion Guardian, many, many years, with a local young African guy. His name is Lovemore Sabanda, who was collecting data from the rural communities on the households in the rural communities, what is their interpretation and what is their reaction when he brings up the word lions, because they're all accustomed to seeing lions coming into the rural areas. And he did an amazing job of about 350 interviews. It took him a year, going from house to house to find on a set parameter what was their reaction towards lions. Were they anti-lions? What was the cultural value? And he's a local. He speaks beautiful English. He then, as a result of that, decided this could be my thesis for a PhD. And Oxford University picked him up and said, we'll give you a bursary. And he's been in Oxford University. I think he was there in Oxford for 4 years. He's now come back to Zimbabwe as Dr. Lovemore Sabanda. So it's a great, great feat. And I've been a personal supporter of Lovemore's. Him and I wrote the elephant comic because he was doing the rural people as a young man. And I said, listen, Lovemore, they want it in English and in Indabeli. I can't even speak a word of Indabeli. You're in Indabeli, you've got to do the translation. So we'll write it in English, then you translate. So we've got a comic that is half, well, the whole story is in English, and then upside down on the other side of the comic, it's in the entire story is in Indabeli. And that was the start. And we gave those out to the local primary schools that are adjacent to a protected area. and then said to the teachers and the headmasters, give us feedback. What? And I went there quite a few times and had to stand in the classroom for hours on end while each child had to read a page to me of what I'd written. And I then realized, but hang on, this is powerful stuff. These kids now understand the value of a lion. And then we touched a little bit on the cultural value, because we said, okay, you know, the easiest way to get rid of this problem, we shoot all the lions. It's so easy. Just it's a little piece of metal, like I called a bullet. We put a bullet in and you've got no more problems. And the funny part was that I think it was 96 or 95% of the people did not want the lions destroyed, because there's a cultural value. They saw a lion as a beast of strength, and in their culture, we have lived with lions all our life. My ancestors lived with lions. So why should we shoot the lions? So it's a case of living in harmony with wildlife. I researched the fact that whether we have photos of animals with proper script underneath, like any normal school book, and we found that children relate to comic strip. And funny enough, humans, adults also relate to comic strips. The comic strips in the comics are not funny ones. They are actually getting a message across. If I had an untapped supply of comics, I would love to go to the likes of the big safari operators and say, you guys run XYZ Safari Lodge, very upmarket. Around you, there must be rural communities. That's how it works, because your staff, you draw from an area, they've got children and husbands, etc., etc., etc. Please get these comics out as part of the learning experience for their school activities, so that they can read and understand the value of the species. elephant@satib.co.za, all in lowercase. They can email me or they can call me. If they go through to SATIB itself, all the people in SATIB know me. So